Interesting. Do you want me to turn my
All right, we'll get started here about 6:05. Give people a chance to jump on. We appreciate you all joining us this evening. And in the chat, if you could just put your name, your pronouns, and what area you live in, that would be amazing. All right. And sorry about no awesome music to go, but I am not that adept at getting the music to do what it's supposed to do. Um, One of my skill sets I need to learn and work on. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. We want to thank you for taking time out of your evening and joining us for B Seattle's Building Tenant Power September workshop on organizing for the comprehensive plan. My name is Tanya Moore. I am the operations director at B Seattle. My pronouns are she, her. I'm going to start us off with a land acknowledgement. We are in the land of the Coast Salish peoples. I would like to recognize that we are occupying the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe. As we do this important work on these lands, we understand that our collective liberation cannot happen without Indigenous sovereignty. We encourage each of you to sign the petition for federal recognition of the Duwamish tribe. And if you're able, visit the Longhouse and pay rent to the Duwamish. You can learn more from Real Rent Duwamish. We'll include a link for them in the resource guide that will be sent out after the presentation, and you'll also notice that links will be dropped in the chat. Our resource guide contains contact information for the Renting in Seattle helpline, the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspections, also known as SDCI. They're responsible for enforcing landlord-tenant laws, the Seattle Office for Civil Rights, as well as a bunch of other organizations that provide services to renters. We encourage you to get more involved with B Seattle. We're always seeking table volunteers, flyer friends, and people interested in developing their skills as part of our tenant leadership teams. We host 2 renter councils meetings every month. We have the Elder Renter Council, which centers around renters age 55 plus, and the Seattle Renter Organizing Council. These councils were created for renters to work together to strategize and fight for renter protections that they feel are important to their communities, give and receive peer-to-peer support for folks organizing in their buildings, grow renter power, and of course, build community. We will drop the links to sign up for the email lists in the chat, and this allows you to know when upcoming meetings are happening. Before we begin, we're going to have some announcements that are going on in our community of events, and we feel you should be aware of them. The first one we've got is Thursday, September 28th from 5:30 to 9 at Common Good Tacoma, 621 Tacoma Avenue South in Tacoma. Hopelessness, healing, and the juxtaposition of joy. Listen, learn, and laugh with JFP's Class 10, featuring local comedian Sam Miller and beloved members of our lived experience community, a Jane's Fellowship event. Tuesday, October 3rd at 5 p.m. at University Branch of the Seattle Public Library, the Seattle King County Coalition on Homelessness presents Voting Rights and Registration Community Trainings. This in-person training is geared towards community members who are interested in spreading information that helps people experiencing homelessness know their voting rights, how to register to vote, and how to cast their ballot. Voter registration events take place at homeless service sites and involve interaction with members of the public, including those who are experiencing homelessness. Wednesday, October 11th from 3 to 4:45 p.m. online via Zoom, Solid Ground presents their Rent Smart webinar. How can I get my landlord to make repairs to my rental? Are you having issues in your rental that need repair? Are you having a hard time getting your landlord to make those repairs? This webinar will explain your tenant rights and what you need to do to request repairs from your landlord. Thursday, October 12th from 6:30 to 8:30 at El Centro de la Raza, room 311, which is the Roberto Maestas Digital Literacy Lab, or online via Zoom, the Seattle Renter Organizing Council meeting. This month, we're going to be working with members to put together a toolkit for budget advocacy. We'll work on crafting public comments together, and dinner will be provided for in-person attendees. Thursday, October 12th and 19th, this is a two-day event. From 6 to 8 p.m. in person, LGBTQ Allyship is offering a leadership training event for experienced worker leaders and those interested in worker organizing. Across 2 evenings, attendees will learn from experts, including a labor rights lawyer and an experienced organizer. Key takeaways from this training include understanding legal worker rights, fostering worker solidarity, leadership techniques, and knowledge of organizing laws. Saturday, October 14th, from 9 to 3 p.m. virtually, the Seattle Home Fair virtual presentations hosted by SDCI, or the Seattle Department of Construction and Inspection. 6 virtual lectures covering topics from renting in Seattle to building codes. For more information and to register, the links are being put in the chat. There's several different workshops in there. So Wednesday, October 18th from 12:30 to 2:30 in person, the location to be determined, or online via Zoom, Elder Renter Council meeting. Snacks and beverages will be provided for in-person attendees. Wednesday, October 18th at 5 p.m. at Seattle City Hall, or remotely by call-in, a public hearing for the Seattle City budget. This is your chance for what you want the city to spend funds on in 2024. Do you want community organizations like D Seattle to continue to put on workshops, hosting renter councils, and help with building organizing? Let the city know. Come to City Hall in person to give public comment or sign up online, call into the meeting. The online sign-up sheet will open at 3 p.m. Thursday, October 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Washington Hall, 153 14th Ave in Seattle. The I'm Your Neighbors event celebrating 29 years of real change. Real Change will be celebrating 29 years of jobs, journalism, and justice. Join Real Change to eat delicious food, listen to live music and comedy, celebrate folks who bust myths around homelessness, build community, and create lasting change every single day on the streets of Seattle. The tickets are sliding fees. Saturday, October 21st from 9 to 2, the Filipino Community Center, 5740 Martin Luther King Jr. Way South, the Seattle Home Fair presented by SDCI. SDCI staff and other city department staff will be available to answer your question. Additionally, there will be 3 presentations to attend in person. You can learn about ADUs and DADUs. There'll be an overview of Seattle's tree regulations and renting in Seattle Q&A. Remember to show up early as space will be limited. These free events will be jam-packed with useful information about rental housing rules, our permitting and inspection processes, emergency preparedness, and much more. There's something for everyone. Tuesday, October 24th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. online via Zoom. The RAP, which is the resident, sorry, my brain skipped a beat, I apologize. The RAP King County Regional Call. The aim of the Resident Action Project is to build a statewide network of people who are directly impacted by housing and homelessness issues, who are leading the charge for social change. You can gain organizing, advocacy, and policy skills by attending RAP's monthly regional Zoom meetings on the 4th Tuesday of every month at 5:30. And the link that's being put in the chat is a direct link. Wednesday, October 25th from 6 to 8 p.m., Seattle's October Building Tenant Power Workshop will be held. We'll focus on universal design and accessibility rights for tenants. And Saturday, November 18th from 6 to 9 p.m. at Metropolis, 2931 First Ave in Seattle, 350 Seattle presents Intertwine 2023. 350 Seattle is celebrating their 10th anniversary with a lively event filled with music, fun, and a shared feast. The organization has a lot to commemorate and invites friends and neighbors to join them on November 18th for their annual dinner and fundraising celebration. The occasion will provide an opportunity to applaud the hard work and achievements of the resilient community, as well as the remarkable grassroots momentum that's been generated over the past year and throughout the past decade. Registration information will be made available soon. All right, now that we are through all of those, I would like to introduce our awesome and amazing guest speakers for tonight's workshop, focused on organizing around the comprehensive plan. Kimberly Loewen is an organizer with the Services Not Sweeps Coalition and active in local mutual aid groups. She also works at a nonprofit that focuses on preserving affordable and healthy housing that is climate resilient. Naishin Fu is a steering committee member of the Complete Communities Coalition, which advocates for inclusive growth strategies. She's also a staff member of House Our Neighbors and an organizer with Tech for Housing. I'm gonna stop share, and it is all y'all.
Cool, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Tanya. I'm going to share my screen. All right, can you see that?
You ready for me to jump in?
Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome. I think the next slide's introductions, but Tanya just gave a great introduction to Naishin and I, so we might just skip over that. But yeah, just wanted to say welcome. This workshop is about building tenant power, and we are talking about comp plans. So you might be wondering why comp plans are connected to building tenant power, but Naishin and here are hopefully gonna make that connection for you today. And then come up and have some call to action at the end. So yeah, we can skip introductions. I was gonna do on the slide, everyone to put in the chat their name, but we've already done that too. But if you feel like putting in like kind of why you're here today or why you decided to show up, that would be fun. If you don't want to, that's fine, but just that'd be kind of fun to kind of get a sense of like where people are at and kind of like why they showed up today. So feel free to put in the chat if you'd like. Naishin, do you want to do any more intros? Or are you good and go to the next slide? I feel like
I'll say a little bit, just, Tanya went over kind of who we are, but, I came into housing advocacy less than 2 years ago. I had no idea what the comprehensive plan was. I've kind of jumped in feet first and have been involved with, as you see, a lot of organizations doing social housing, renter rights, land use. So have kind of spanned a lot of work across the housing ecosystem, but I think for everything to work, one of the things we need to do at a baseline is have a really strong comprehensive plan. And so, when I first heard about it, I didn't know what it was. When I started learning more about what it was, I was surprised. I was like, this seems really important, but nobody knows about it. I've never heard of it, and so I kind of started diving in, and it is a very technical space, but we're hoping that we can show you that you don't have to have all of that knowledge to get involved. I think that's it.
yeah, awesome, Naishin. I guess I can just add on just on my background. I had previously worked at a regional planning council in another state, and so did reviews of comprehensive plans probably not 15 years ago, but for a regional. So I do have experience like actually reviewing comprehensive plans in the past. And since then have been really focused on energy planning, have done some different types of municipal planning around energy. And now in the last 12 years have really been focused on specifically affordable housing, which Tanya mentioned in the intro, but an organization called Elevate that focuses on preserving affordable housing through upgrading buildings. So upgrading affordable housing to make them reduce energy burdens and make them more resilient. And then as you can see in my community organizing work, I'm also focused on housing. So housing has been a through line in all I do, paid work wise and community work wise for quite a long time. So passionate all around and bringing the comp plan back around to some of my work 15 years ago. So I'm going to jump to the next slide. Be great. So we want to start off with a poll, just to get a sense. And I think, I don't know if Kate or someone, awesome. So yeah, just love to, if everyone could just take a minute, I'll take a pause and just kind of go through these questions, but love to just kind of get a sense of what people know about comprehensive plans and zoning, kind of just get a sense of what knowledge is people are bringing to the room, and then kind of help us kind of also with our messaging.
If anyone's not seeing the poll, just let me know. It seems like it launched.
I don't think I see it, but I'm on my phone, so I don't know if it shows up somewhere else when you're on your phone.
I am not sure. I can read the questions if that's helpful. Was that Sarah who just spoke?
Yeah.
And you can feel free to share them or put them in the chat or just so you know. But the first question is, how much do you know about Seattle's comprehensive plan? None, a little, a decent amount, and a whole lot.
Thanks.
The second question is, how much do you know about the history of zoning in Seattle? Kind of similar, what is zoning? A little, decent or a whole lot. Third question is, how much of Seattle's land use has been zoned for single family homes only? And the multiple choice is 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%. And the fourth question is, what is your current housing situation? You need housing, you're a renter in multifamily building, a renter in a single family building, or an owner.
I'll just clarify, I see the note in the chat. I meant to clarify this, that it's true that there's the name of quote single family neighborhoods is no longer single family, it's neighborhood residential. That's been the term that's most well known, which is what we've used here. And there's a state law that was passed last year that really changes this as well, and we'll go into that. So this question is more about how much of Seattle's land, like up until recently, has been zoned for single family. And neighborhood residential changed the name, but that itself didn't change the actual zoning, from what I understand. All right, I'm gonna end the poll. It looks like maybe not everyone was able to participate, which is fine. Let me see if I share results. Do you see anything up if I share the results, or do I have to pull this here?
I see it.
You see something? Okay. All right, so it looks like we're kind of evenly split between folks who know a little bit about the comp plan and more, and say it's similar with zoning. Surprisingly, 75% of folks who filled out the poll were owners. So I guess maybe our target audience is different than we expected, but Kimberly, do you want to, sorry, I jumped in. I don't know if you want to say anything else about what you're seeing here.
No, that's helpful. I thanks you for filling it out. That give me a sense. It sounds like people have a good amount of knowledge in some of this, so I may not go as deep in some things, and we can always pause and go deeper if people have questions. But thank you for filling out. I don't have anything else mentioned unless you do.
No.
So, objectives, really, I kind of said this already, but I really hope for today is for folks to learn more about land use and zoning, how it really shaped the housing crisis that we're in today, understand how the comprehensive plan impacts you, and then also, gain specific knowledge and kind of how you can engage. And so a specific call to action on how you can engage in the comprehensive plan update, which hopefully will support a more inclusive and equitable city. I also just would say we have a few more interactive components in the workshop, but I would love for people to put in the chat or raise their hand or come off mute whenever they have a question. I'd rather just pause in the moment in the middle and ask questions or bring in comments and have this more of a we're in a circle space than in a talking at you space. So just wanted to welcome that as people have questions or comments. Go to the next slide. So what are comprehensive plans? We are going to just start with this kind of like basic, what is a comprehensive plan? I'm going to spend some time just a little bit on definitions and history to kind of ground us and bring us where we are today with the comprehensive plan updates. There comprehensive plans, I'm just going to kind of give a general idea of what they are. They really are a feature of long-term planning for cities and counties all over the country in the United States. It's really both a process and documentation for creating a broad long-term vision for future land uses and basically building environments. So that is just one definition. There are kind of many definitions out there. Different states have different requirements, whether cities and counties do them. I most recently lived in Chicago before Seattle, and Chicago does not have the same type of comprehensive plan. So it really just depends on the state you're in. But think about Seattle's comprehensive plan as like a guide for making decisions about where cities going to locate jobs, housing, where we can invest in transportation, utilities, parks, and other public assets. So it's really sometimes called a master plan or a general plan. It's really a roadmap to how the city can and will grow over with a 10-year, and it's updated every 10 years in Seattle. Naishin's going to get more into this in a little bit, but just wanted to note Seattle's first comp plan was in 1957, which was actually not mandatory at that time, but that's when we had our first comp plan, and it mostly focused on transportation, specifically the automobile and preserving single family. So that was the focus at the time. So you can imagine how that changed things. And again, things were very much focused on people who could own cars and afford a single family home. In 1990, because of the slide, Washington did pass a Growth Management Act. Many states did in like the mid 80s to mid 90s. And this is when comprehensive plans across the country really became mandatory. What I did want to share is that the specific Washington Growth Management Act requires comprehensive plans to show that each city has enough land with the right zoning to absorb growth that is expected to occur. So this is where it is really critical, and it really gets to the land use that I highlighted here. And so in the comprehensive plan in this conversation, you know, Naishin and I are just focusing on that land use piece, which really says what you can build where, and really kind of lays out future development patterns. So I just put this up. I'm not going to read this, but I just pulled this quick from the current Seattle's 2035 plan and their land use section. And I just wanted to highlight this last sentence just to kind of show you like the impact of it and kind of like of the land use piece. So I'm just going to read this last sentence, but land use policies recognize the character of the city's different neighborhoods, part of what makes Seattle such an attractive place to live. That just jumped out at me because it's like, yes, it's in this positive light, but it also can really be discriminatory and create barriers for people to be able to afford to live in the city. So I think it's like important that it's painted in this, like, we have these unique neighborhoods and this is what we do with land use, but it's also important to understand the potential like negative impacts that land use planning can have. You go next slide. So I'm going to just jump into zoning. We're talking about land use, and I just want to differentiate a little bit between land use and zoning. They do overlap, but land use, as I mentioned earlier, really reflects future development patterns, where zoning more specifically defines and regulates what uses are allowed on specific parcels. And so this is a lot of the comprehensive plans really, again, are this roadmap or guide. They're like kind of encouragements of things. But the real teeth in a comprehensive plan is the zoning piece that is actually like a regulatory component of it. So as far as I know, someone correct me, jump in if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, if comprehensive plans legislation requires the zoning to be a part of that, that is the one piece that really kind of has a regulatory piece that can really have teeth in the comp plan. Other stuff is really just, we'd like to have more trees and we'd like to have more parks, but it may not say exactly how that's going to happen. So where am I lost myself here? So yeah, zoning really determines what can be built where. So uses residential, commercial, industrial. You can see here's an example of Seattle's current zoning, and you can see that yellowish color is that neighborhood residential that we talked about. I did this because it is single family. I feel like the name was just changed to make it a little bit softer, but that's my take. But just wanted to name that zoning in this country did come before comprehensive plans. And Naishin's going to talk about some more history of zoning in Seattle, but I did just want to name that zoning was one of the first tools to enforce segregation during the Great Migration in the Midwest. So it really started in the Midwest and around St. Louis area, even in New York. But so when the Great Migration happened from the South, it is when zoning practices started to basically continue segregation on the North. So I just think that's a really important thing to understand, that zoning came in as a discriminatory tool initially in the country. And that started in 1923 in Seattle with single family zoning. So last thing I'll say on this is that zoning is super important for as resolving our housing crisis issues and having housing that's affordable and accessible to everyone, but it is not by any means the solution all, right? Like if we can't build certain types of housing in certain areas, it limits what we can do. And so we need to have this blueprint, this roadmap where we have ability to build whatever type of housing we need wherever in the city to accommodate growth and meet people where they're at and house people. But it is really, to me, just kind of like the baseline. And then we need to build, policies on top of that allow for the other components. Okay, I feel like I'm talking a lot here. I have, I think, 2 more. Is there any questions right now? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll also just jump into it's not sufficient piece of a lot of other policies that are also needed to address the housing crisis, like, rent control, rent stabilization, tenants' rights, things like social housing and subsidies. They all need to work together. But we need zoning changes so that there can be social housing everywhere and there can be apartments, where better policies can be applied. So it's, kind of one of a foundational piece, I guess.
But I think, yeah, Joanna, you guys have some great, sorry, I'm just looking through these comments, if there's anything. You guys are bringing knowledge, you should just unmute yourselves and jump in. So this, Joanna, your comments segues right into this, which I just wanted to touch on a little bit on zoning as racial exclusion, which I touched on already, but I did just want to mention kind of 3 things that historically have happened, and a lot of the country was specifically talking about here in Seattle. So racial restricted covenants were really the first thing that happened. These were agreements where groups of owners, developers, realtors bound not to sell or rent properties to specific groups of people, or people based on their race and ethnicity, just very directly. I know people who face this, who were trying to buy or rent in Seattle and couldn't. So it is a very real thing. Just one statistic that nearly 1,000 owners on Capitol Hill in the late 1920s did this in a coordinated campaign. So it is a very real thing where people of color were restricted to live in a lot of parts of the city just based on individuals. This wasn't any policy, but just individuals coming together to do this. And then redlining really started in the 1930s, again, which was, you know, federally, but basically undertook a project to evaluate mortgages to show where it was best for people to buy. And there was 4 different kind of categories that they had. So, you know, realtors and developers could kind of say, okay, we're not going to rent or buy or sell here. And in this map, you can see the red is that considered the most is hazardous. And so basically the yellow and the red are 2 that they, you know, wouldn't recommend for people to live in. And you can see where those areas are in Seattle, and that had huge impacts on, again, where people of color or lower wealth were able to buy and live or rent. And then the last thing is, I guess I just want to say redlining promoted housing segregation in tandem with racially restricted covenants. So those 2 things were happening in parallel. One was really like policy government run, and one was individuals doing it. And those were really running in tandem. And then, yes, correct. And then debating whether to open it up for Jan, if you want to say more about that, because it is where banks can give mortgages, but it also was about determining these 3 different areas, and that information was given to realtors, and so they would also decide where to show properties or not show properties to people. So it was layered. The main thing was, yes, that banks wouldn't give loans or mortgages, but it was layered kind of tactics of how they used to apply the information. So it had impacts in a lot of different ways. And then single family zoning came in again in 1923, which really was a very intentional by someone named Bartholomew, who was one of the first full-time urban planners in St. Louis, and then was and started this in St. Louis in 1916, and then in 1923 was in Seattle, and kind of launched the first single family zoning, again as kind of an extension of some of that the restrictions that were going on. I think just have one last slide that really just looks at zoning as economic exclusion. And so just wanted to also name that, again, this, as we know, this is racially driven and economically exclusive driven. And so as you can see, I'm not going to read this quote, feel free to read it, but just wanted to point out that this graphic on the left, you can see it was the City of Seattle Zoning Commission who had this flyer. So, you know, there's a lot of messaging out there, even from the government, to deter multifamily, to deter different kinds of homes that weren't single family.
Kimberly, I'm going to add one thing on the last slide, which is that all these practices that kind of emerged after 1920 came after a 1917 Supreme Court ruling that actually declared racial zoning. So you actually used to be able to just say zoning, you know, this is the zoning by race. That became unconstitutional. And so these are the other ways that people found to kind of maintain those without running afoul of that actual ruling. So it's kind of what caused all this. All right, so now that we have that great overview of comprehensive plans and zoning, we can talk a little bit more about the history in Seattle specifically. So Kimberly already mentioned Harlan Bartholomew, who arrived in Seattle in 1922 to consult on some of our planning. Again, he was the one who had already been doing a lot of work around this intention of preserving more desirable residential neighborhoods and prevent movement of people into them that they just didn't think belonged there. So in 1923, pre-1923, multifamily buildings were allowed anywhere buildings were allowed in Seattle. And then once this 1923 plan came about, we created our first kind of single family zoning district. It wasn't called that, it was called a first residence district, and it allowed for single family homes, public schools, churches, and parks. In 1947, we further carved out more areas that were zoned for multifamily and downzoned them to max duplex. So removing additional land that were available for multifamily housing. 1957, we basically did that again. We took more of our multifamily land and downzoned those to single family. And it's worth noting that, so this red line here is kind of where we've gotten on the timeline in the 1950s, right? So population has been increasing, but we're downzoning, which doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you'll see after this line, population continues to grow. And so the question is, what did we do about this? So we'll jump forward to 1994, when Seattle's comprehensive plan created this concept called the urban village strategy. This map on the right, the orange, shows where either urban villages or urban centers, which are even larger, allow for more housing and more building, are. So our population was booming. We created some areas where we allowed more growth in this orange, but the areas in white we basically left exactly the same. So this kind of created like two cities within a city. So you think about, if you've been here a while, I moved here in 2016, so some of this was definitely well underway, but I know neighborhoods like Ballard, folks talk about just overnight change, because a lot of the housing growth was squeezed into a small area. And so you see a lot of change there and no change, outside of those lines. I think about 83% of the new homes built recently have been built in urban villages. In 2019, this wasn't a comprehensive plan, but it was almost kind of like a mini comprehensive plan. It was called the Housing Affordability and Livability Agenda. I don't have deep knowledge on this. I wasn't, working on this issue during the time. I kind of had an awareness, but this is, this created more growth in some urban villages and centers. So they upzoned urban villages and some urban centers, and they had wanted, there was a proposal to upzone some single family areas at that time, but that created such uproar that, it did not end up happening. And so these are all, so we're trying to adjust to growth, but they're really kind of incremental changes in addition to, ADUs, DADUs that we allowed in neighborhood residential zones, single family zones, that can add more units. They're all things that are necessary again, but given how much our population has grown, these were not enough to keep up with the people coming in, and that's kind of what has fueled our housing crisis. So I just wanted to pull up these two maps for comparison. The one on the right is one you've seen already. This is our 2022 zoning map. The one on the left was 1923. So on the left, you'll see the tan areas are the first residential district, or where single family zoning was. And then on the right in 2022, that yellow again is our neighborhood residential zone. And you'll see that, it's been actually exactly 100 years from 1923. And there's been a little bit of change, but really not that much. It looks very, very similar. It's worth noting that the city council many years ago required that this racial equity analysis be done on the urban village strategy. And the findings were really clear that, racial disparities, persisted, with this strategy. And some of the recommendations made here, you'll see, are to allow more housing types across the city, keep supporting affordable housing, and mitigate displacement. The current comprehensive plan process and the city's communication around it, they really prioritize talking about racial equity being a goal. And I think one of our jobs is, now kind of understanding what needs to happen to really get to this, is to hold them accountable. We know that, housing needs to be more housing needs to be built, especially in areas that didn't previously allow it. And so I think it's fine to say that that's a goal, but I think what the outcome is and what they choose to do really indicates whether they will actually meet that goal. So there's a local journalist, KOW, Joshua McNichols, who has done a lot of great reporting on housing, and he had this TikTok video, the short video that I think kind of pulls together a lot of the concepts we've been talking about. So I thought I would play that. Let me know if there are any sound issues or anything.
Come on, I can't hear
the sound.
Mm-mm.
Wait, is there a sound issue?
Yeah, we can't hear the sound. I think there's like a. Does anyone know? I think there's a button you have to. Like to be able to play what's through your screen onto the.
And Zoom?
Unsure, be sure with sound check. There you go. Thank you.
Wait, what do we do?
So I think you unshare that screen, and I think on the screen there's a way to share it with sound.
Ah, share sound, I see. Thank you. All right, let me know if this is better. Back.
This is Lois Martin. She lives in the Central District, and sometimes she feels overwhelmed by the growth coming to her neighborhood.
A lot of people say, oh, well, if we have more density, it'll bring the prices down. That hasn't happened.
I hear from people like Lois all the time. People who may like having housing in their neighborhood, but they don't understand why it has to change their neighborhood so dramatically, so quickly, and why the housing that gets built is so expensive. The answer has a lot to do with Seattle's current growth strategy, how the city's growing. And concerns like we just heard are a major reason why a lot of people want to change that strategy. Let me explain. The 10 glasses in front of me here represent Seattle. And this pitcher of lemonade here represents the 250,000 people who are moving to Seattle in the next 20 years or so. Right now, 83% of new homes that are built in Seattle are built in urban villages, in places like where Lois lives. Urban villages make up about 20% of the land in Seattle where homes can be built. So imagine trying to pour 83% of the lemonade in this pitcher into just 2 glasses. All that lemonade spilling over is people not getting into homes. People moving out of the city or moving onto the street. In neighborhoods like Lois's with lots of Black families, that means lots of people moving to Rainier Beach or Kent or Federal Way. All that growth changes these neighborhoods dramatically, and it still doesn't meet market demand. That failure pushes home prices up. A lot of people want to reform the system by opening up all residential neighborhoods to more kinds of housing. That would mean more neighborhoods would change, but each neighborhood would change less.
All right. Hopefully that is a visual and helpful way to think about this. I'm going to pass it back to Kimberly. Talk about middle housing.
Yeah, thanks, Naishin. So just wanted to mention, a lot of you may already know, but there was a bill passed in this last state legislation in earlier this year, House Bill 1110, which is the middle housing bill. So just want to at least mention this. We are not sure how it's all going to be implemented yet, but I think it is going to be an impactful and certainly relevant to a lot of the city's growth strategy. You know, just name that fourplexes is now allowed throughout the city, sixplexes are allowed. Sixplexes meaning buildings with 6 units are allowed within a quarter-mile of major transit stop. And so there is been progress made at the state to allow for more of this middle housing. As you can see, and I actually have a graph later that shows this more, but you know, in Seattle, we have a lot of detached single-family homes. And then if we do have multifamily, it is mostly large buildings over, you know, 20 units that are in those urban growth centers, but there isn't this in between that really allows for instance, I live in Greenwood. If there was a house, a single family home that's demolished right now, a larger single family home just gets built that's like $2 million, whereas we could put a fourplex there, a sixplex there, and that could have been happening over, you know, the last couple decades. And so we would have a sprinkling of other buildings where, like, you know, people could rent or even own a condo. So just wanted to name that bill passed, and we know that's going to impact things. We also know that it's not enough. It's going to help, but it is not nearly enough. And so we still need within this comprehensive plan to ask the city to do more and take it further. So just wanted to at least mention that. And then this is what I was referring to on this, just this graph, since you kind of saw the last slide. I just wanted to show, just kind of reconfirm that zoning is necessary. And Naishin talked about this earlier, but it's not sufficient. Just wanted to quick kind of talk about this graph. This is Seattle's total housing units, and so units by structure. So on the left is 1 unit detached and attached to single family, and then goes to, you know, 2 to 4, 5 to 8, 5 to 9 units, 10 to 19, and 20 or more. And you can see most of the housing in Seattle is either this single family or this 20 or more. And so it's been, you know, single family or this high density that is focused in this 20%, but we're not allowing for diversity of types of housing throughout the whole city. But again, just wanting to recognize, this doesn't address, you know, it helps maybe address affordability if there's more options for people. But we also need to be still addressing with different policy accessibility, ability to run place, housing conditions, rent control, all the other policies that need to like layer on top of this. So again, just saying we need to work on the zoning and keep working on all the other things we're working on as well. And then wanted to just take a moment to do a little exercise and figure out what zoning is in your neighborhood. I would love if people want to put in the chat or got prompt, but Naishin just put in the chat. If everyone wants to click on that link goes to basically a zoning map of, actually, Naishin, are you able to open it? So I don't know if people have seen this before, but basically you can zoom in. I just wanted to go over quick on the top right corner. There's this layered list and you can add different layers on, but next to it, kind of that bulleted list is the legend. So if you click on that, you can kind of see what the specific colors are. So just want to name that. But you can go into this kind of search box, street, place, neighborhood on the top left corner and type in your address and zoom into your address and know what your zoning is or in your neighborhood. So just wanted to give people a couple of minutes to do that, and would love if people want to just come off mute and just share if you have any thing that's unexpected, maybe it's not, or surprising, kind of any reflections you have from just like kind of zooming in on your neighborhood and seeing what the zoning is like or in your area. So I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to do that.
I'll jump in on mine.
Please do.
I actually live technically according to this map in Licton Springs, right off Aurora. And ours is low-rise multifamily, which you were talking about seeing. We just had this experience where I live. My landlady owned the small house in front and the land and then built a garage and another unit that she lived in for a period of time. But during COVID, several places sold their back land. So like across from us, there's a small house in front and they built two townhomes, condos behind it. And we're seeing more of that in our neighborhood where people are either homes that are being demolished and the fourplexes or the townhomes are being put up. And I know that during COVID, when spaces were at a premium, she was offered an insane amount of money, close to $2.5 million for her land. And because her yard in the back is big enough to fit two condos. And so we're seeing more of that in our neighborhood. These so smaller yards, if you have a yard, etc.
Can I ask Tanya, are they like side by side two flats? Because that's still considered zoning wise, it's still considered detached, single family detached. Sorry, attached. If they're not on if they're not on top of each other, but they're side by side and they share a full wall. So a lot of like developers are getting around, which is good, right? It's, I mean, there's more units than one, but it's still considered. So I'm just curious in that zoning if they're allowed to do.
Some of them, like the one across from us, they share a wall in the back. Like there's the small house in the front, the original house, and then the land in the back. They built two townhomes that share
Interesting.
a wall. But there are others in the neighborhood that no, they're not. So I'm not sure how they're getting around that or if that's changed, but yeah.
I took a look at mine and it wasn't a surprise. I live in the most densely populated neighborhood in Seattle, right by the Capitol Hill light rail station. And it's just this cross section of like commercial interspersed with like a whole bunch of that more dense low-rise multifamily and some high density multifamily in my vicinity as well. The use of the Sound Transit property definitely changed the flavor of the neighborhood.
Thanks for sharing, Dee and Tanya. Does anyone else want to share? Should we stream through the comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I live in a single family neighborhood 1 block from commercial. I'm right off of Greenwood. But the house that I live in it's zoned as single family, but there's actually several units in the building. So it's not, the city doesn't know that.
You know how old your building is?
It was built in the 50s. And then it was it was heavily remodeled in the 70s, and then in the 90s it was broken into multiple units. And that's actually something that quite a few buildings in my neighborhood have done. They're just doing, you know, coyote style.
That reminds me of another point where, you know, in these neighborhoods that have been single family, but like we said, there was a time where nothing was single family, and so there are many homes that are called non-conforming. That, you know, maybe it's different than your situation where people have been kind of going rogue and changing, but back in the day, you know, when they were built in the early 1900s. They were duplexes and triplexes, then they were downzoned. And so now you've got 3 units if it's a single family zone area, if that gets knocked down, it can actually only be replaced. Well, now we can replace it with a single family unit and an ADU or DADU. So there can be kind of 3, but not equally sized units. But basically you could actually lose housing if you don't, if we don't change some of these zoning as buildings get older, and you know, they can be replaced only by kind of expensive homes.
Well, one of the downsides to the way my household, because the city only recognizes it as a single family home, even though there's quite a few people living in the house. And so we get penalized because our utility and water usage is high. So after a certain amount of water that a house uses, you get a surcharge on that. And there's no, you know, it's like there should be a break because we're actually using less water per person. But because do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get hit by that kind of stuff. And then, you know, like applying for the city discount programs the discount program is geared towards families with children who don't work. So, you know, you have 4 people in a household and it has the guidelines, assuming that 2 people don't work. But if you have 4 adults in the household, you know, and we're all low income, but our combined income is still way outside the limits of getting discounts like that. And then, so if the zoning changed, then, you know, then my landlady would not be incentivized to hide that there's multiple households, and we would be able to get more help as low income people.
Thank you for sharing that. That's like a new learning for me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I think I should have worked in the energy space, but utilities, like you said, are a whole nother issue layered on top of this. That's
right.
Anyway, so then, yeah, thank you, Kate, for sharing that.
All right, if there's no additional thoughts, we will keep moving. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so now let's talk about this comprehensive plan, this newest one, and where we are. So as Kimberly mentioned, this happens, the major update happens once every 10 years. The next one will be voted in at the end of 2024, but it's a very lengthy process. So it started about a year ago. You can see this blue box, we're about halfway through, things are delayed, so these times may be a little bit off. There was already a round of public engagement where the city released a few different ways we could grow in terms of where housing could be built. They got comments on that there was an online portal. There were also 5 or 6 community meetings. I went to 2 of those. They happen in different parts of the city. And this is, when we say the city, we mean the OPCD, which stands for Office of Planning and Community Development, I think. They're the ones that are putting this together. And right now, so they took all that public comment and they've been in this stage where they've been doing deep analysis. This is the really technical part. They're going to put out a document that's like over 1,000 pages long that's going to assess these different growth strategies and their environmental impact on the city. It's something that most people would not read and would not expect anyone to read it. There will also be a draft plan that's released, and that's more about the zoning piece. So what OPCD is going to propose as like, here's our draft of what the actual new plan will be. That will kick off another round of public engagement. So this is very delayed. These 2 documents, the draft plan and the environmental impact statement, were supposed to be released originally in June. Then they said they were delayed to September, and then they said they were delayed to October. We already had the session moved once and we didn't want to move it again. So we don't have the documents to react to right now. That will hopefully come in October, although who knows if that can be delayed further. It's not the best time because it overlaps with elections and the budget season. And so, you know, it will be hard to maybe get as much attention on this as otherwise. So we really do hope people will still get involved. After that, there'll be, the mayor will get to put his preferred plan out, which the city council will take. They can, I don't know if they kind of make changes to the mayor or they come out with their own, but the city council has the final say. Although I'm sure they're very influenced by what the mayor's plan is. And so that will happen probably at the end of 2024. So this is a photo from one of the community meetings. I'm here in the bottom left corner. So yeah, so the city says they're planning to do another round of in-person and online engagement. Again, we want renters voices to be included as, you know, I think we mentioned earlier, but since 2019, there are now more renters than homeowners in Seattle. Yet apartments are still not allowed on the majority of our land, as we've talked about. And historically in these forums, wealthy homeowners and landlords are overrepresented. You know, they often have more time and the means to show up. It is hard to come, you know, at the end of the day, fully understand. But if you have the privilege and the ability to be able to go, we really want different voices to be reflected. It is changing. I'd say, you know, the most recent sessions I've gone to have been very pro, you know, we need more housing of all kinds everywhere in the city. But as it gets later and later in the process, I think the opposition will come out more strongly. So to help you kind of get the juices flowing, thinking about what you might say and what to think about when making these comments. Again, like I was saying, you do not need to have technical knowledge, really deep understanding of what a comprehensive plan is and all of the technical details. Really, you want to think about, you know, what do you want now? What might you want later? What do your loved ones need out of housing and neighborhood and amenities? So I'm going to put this link into the chat. It's a Jamboard. I don't know. Oh, that's the right one. Click on the Jamboard. For those who haven't used one of these before, click on the link. It should open this page. Here on the left side, you'll see this little icon that looks like a sticky note. You click on that, you can choose, you know, different colors, and you can type, just basically, you know, think about, again, the things I just said, like what kind of building do you want to live in? What neighborhood do you want to live in? Do you want a quiet street? Do you want a bustling street with restaurants and shops? Do you want to be near a park? What features do you want in your neighborhood? So, you know, whatever speaks to you, just put a few sticky notes on here. I will, you know, maybe move them around and group them. And we kind of see where you're at. You know, think about your unique personal needs and interests. Some things that come to my mind, my parents live in Austin, Texas right now, but they would like to move to Seattle to be closer to us. They're aging, so they don't want stairs. They want to, you know, ideally be in a condo. There's not a lot of those in Seattle. So, you know, kind of realizing just how low of a stock we have of those. We have a lot of the skinny townhomes, which work for a lot of people, but not for folks like my parents. The other thing is I have 2 kids in public school, and education equity has been a real interest of mine. Our schools are very segregated, and that really goes back to our segregated housing. There was a time when Seattle did busing, but obviously that is not convenient or makes sense for a lot of people. And so the way to have integrated schools is to have integrated housing. And so those are kind of 2 reasons personally why this is important to me. So think about all those things and put your thoughts down here. We'll give maybe 3 minutes to
I hadn't used Jamboard before. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a good, I must have gained traction during the pandemic. It's a good way to be interactive, but still remote.
The giant bold trees was not me, but I fully approve. It's huge.
I was laughing at that too in a good way.
All right, it looks like we're slowing down here. This is a great collection. I've kind of tried to group them into categories. So it looks like, types of housing. We're seeing single level, middle housing, 4 to 8 units, shelters, transitional housing. Kind of a lot of around accessibility and transit, super important. Affordability, lots of affordability comments here. And then kind of amenity type of things. So trees close to parks and trails, community spaces, community schools, public gathering spaces. I know for me, being a part of a lot of volunteer run groups, there's always a lot of a need for places for people to gather that you don't have to pay for and bring your community together. Totally agree with that. Stores, performing arts, cycling. So these are all great. I see some, in the comments, Joanna was talking about, you want kids, you want schools, kind of what I was talking about, families needing to be able to afford to live here, different kinds of families. Enrollment is going down in Seattle schools. That affects how they're funded and whether they're funded. On my street, we are 2 blocks from my kids' public school, and most of the kids on our street go to private school for some reason. That's another, reason why, that's partially to do with wealth, and again, they're all the stuff is tied together. So yeah, I mean, I think you see a range, different people want different things. I think that's kind of what we're driving at, and we want options for all types of people at different stages in their lives, especially that are affordable and near transit and accessible. And we just don't really allow for that diversity in the city right now. So hopefully that kind of helps you brainstorm a little bit, when the city has public comment, the last round, their questions to engage folks were really accessible, like at this level. Again, like I said, it's not technical, so things like this are perfect to bring to the session or to online, wherever you want to engage. So the actions for today. So I wish we had something better. Like I said, the next round of comp plan documents have not been released yet, so we don't have strong advocacy points yet. We need to see, what they come out with. But the Complete Communities Coalition, which I'm a part of, I'll show a little bit later, a little bit more about that. This is a group of organizations that is pushing for shared values and shared goals in the comprehensive plan. And there is a newsletter sign up link that I'm putting in the chat. These are infrequent emails, but that will let you know when engagement opportunities are coming up, both by the city, and hopefully the coalition will have a plan to also bring advocates together. Depends on how long there is of engagements. They are only required to do a 45-day engagement period, which is really hard to review a 1,000-page document and come up with all the points. And so I think folks will be doing work on there, but unclear exactly what that looks like yet. I'll also put the link to Seattle's comprehensive plan website. They also have a sign up where you can get updates there and also just get more background. There's videos there too that are pretty good to sum up, you know, comprehensive plan overview. I saw, I don't know if Shirley's still here, but Shirley Leung is one of the organizers around Jackson Park for All, jumping in the chat as well. That's kind of almost, there's a mini comprehensive plan in the Jackson Park area. There's light rail stations, I guess, slated for like 130th, 145th, and that's right by the light rail station, where there's a giant golf course where no housing can be built near light rail, or even, you know, walkable paths to the neighborhoods that are past the golf course. So so that piece in itself is almost like a mini comprehensive plan within this larger comprehensive planning process, and Jackson Park for All is organizing around that specifically and doing some good work there. So here's three ways you can get involved. Hopefully, you know, you'll be able to make it up, but we don't know what dates those are coming, so stay tuned. And then a little bit more about the Complete Communities Coalition. I'm not going to read these, but our values are on the left. We have a longer list of policy priorities, but you'll see some of them on the right. Really, it's, you know, different kinds of housing, allowing more housing in more places, making sure there's mitigation for displacement and green building standards, and, you know, reducing parking requirements, etc. And here is a list of the organizations that are part of the steering committee for this. I am actually going to be rolling off the steering committee because I've started this new job with House Our Neighbors, working on social housing, and so I don't really have capacity, but someone will be taking my place, and there are others who are continuing this work forward. I think that is it for us. We will stop here and see if there are any questions coming up.
Okay, I'm wondering if you wanna come off mute and say more about your comment. No pressure if you don't want to, but I'm really interested to hear what are your thoughts on that.
I just had a comment. I honestly knew very little about the comp plan coming into this tonight, and you two have been brilliant. Thank you. You've given me an overview that was necessary and important.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, thanks, Dean.
Yeah, I'll just say this comment in the chat. This is, you know, I know there are obviously a lot of policies that can be implemented to reduce displacement. And I believe the city is actually going to come out with a companion. Don't quote me on it, but I believe they were gonna actually release, you know, a companion document about displacement with this next round of, or soon after, this comprehensive plan, draft plan and EIS. So maybe that will be a little more robust than what has been in the past. I actually haven't been around for past comp plan, so I'm not actually super knowledgeable about this, but thank you for bringing that up.
I have heard that as well, Naishin. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but I haven't heard that.
And, you know, allowing more housing in neighborhoods is obviously, when new building happens, sometimes displacement can happen. And I know, you know, some of the policies out there are to, you know, pay for people to move somewhere temporarily and offer them a place to come back at affordable rates. And I'm sure there are many others. Allowing more housing is in itself, you know, an anti-displacement strategy as well, just if more folks are can live in a neighborhood and take new housing instead of displacing others, you know, that is also part of it. But there are also other policies that are needed. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. So we know that there's another community engagement period coming. And so other than attending the meetings, is there anything else that renters should be doing as far as engaging with the comp plan? Or letting other people know how to engage with the comp plan? Like, do they just the meetings, or should we like sending emails, or like what are the ways to engage?
I think so. I think when the next round of documents come out, that's when, you know, hopefully this coalition will come out with like a sign-on letter and an action link. Last time there were templates. The folks actually organizing this Jackson Park for All effort came out with a really cool personalized template tool online where you can like plug in what you want in it. You know, it's not just taking the exact text and sending the carbon copy, but it kind of, you choose a couple drop downs of like what you want, and it puts together a nice little personalized letter for you. So there are, but I think the spot we're in is like no one is creating that yet because we don't know what we're reacting to. And so those opportunities will come. I don't know exactly what they will be. But we can share, you know, maybe if we have y'all on our mailing list, you know, you can also share with your broader network. And just talking to your friends and neighbors about what this is and that it's happening. I think there's just not an awareness. So bringing that to the communities you're in and the people that you know. We know there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things to get involved in. Everyone's got to pick and choose. So also understand if, you know, there are things that I have to kind of put aside as well. So.
No, it's a good point, Naishin. There are many, we all think, just everything we shared today. Seattle has a long history of housing discrimination, and it continues and persists in many ways. And the comp plan is one piece of a large picture, and many solutions that need to all come together. So yeah, gotta pick what you fight for and fight for it. But yeah, comp plans are not the sexy thing, you know. But thank you, everyone.
Since we publish these workshops online, so people might be seeing them later. And Naishin, you said you went to 2 of those meetings. Like if you're a relic or like a new advocate, what would you expect walking into that meeting? Like as far as what's going to happen and what are you expected to do?
Yeah. So if they're doing them the same as they did before, it was like the first 30 minutes they had some easels and posters up that talk about a little bit of the comp plan, or there was one section that was around parks, and sometimes there's interactive, like put the sticky dot on the thing that you care about the most type of thing. So it's kind of like just like a time when you can wander around and look at more background. And then they sat everyone down. You saw that one photo where we were sitting at these tables, at these circular tables. And so it was groups of, 10 or so that were facilitated by one member of city staff, and then another was taking notes. And like I said, they asked questions that were like, what kind of housing do you need now? What kind of housing do you need in the future? What would you like to see more of in your neighborhood? And they went around and, gave a chance for each person to speak. But it was like a very accessible questions like that, where it does, to me, I don't think it takes a lot of advanced preparation, and it's just kind of about you and what you need. So that was my experience. Again, and then there was an online component. They had an online portal where people could put their comments around some of these, they called them alternatives, for growth, which like one was like, let's just allow more, gradual middle housing throughout Seattle, or just, allow more housing near transit corridors, or build more of these urban villages and smaller versions of it. And then one option was like, do all of the above. So, people commented on that too online. So that's what it's been thus far. I've been told that they're changing the way they do the online part. It might be a different platform, so I don't know what's coming for that. And I think there are, even beyond this 45-day period, I think through the winter there might be more meetings as well, just to continue talking about zoning changes and maybe even like middle housing and how that looks in Seattle. So that's as far as I know.
Yeah, I will just reiterate, I did attend one and it was very accessible, like at least when she was describing it. So I do think that's just important to keep reiterating, because I do think it's like, what is this thing about the comp plan you're going to, and you feel like you need to show up with some type of certain knowledge, and I think you really don't. Like if you just come saying you want more density, you want more this or that, like, and have clarity, I think that's really just what important. People's, like Naishin said, people just need to hear people's voices. And there's various city staff that are at those meetings, so it means a lot for mentors show up and people show up and kind of just voice what they want. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Wednesday evening. I can put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions later on or follow up on anything.
Yes, thank you all for tonight. I learned so much. My brain is still like it's still working from there. So I will say
a lot of this was like done through research, like I've been learning more about this. I still have trouble sometimes talking about what a comp plan is. It's not really easy for anyone. We had to do a lot of, the research was, it wasn't just like in my head. So just know that, yeah, it's all a process.
So you did, usually at the end of every workshop, we have an action, which you already covered, but we'll cover it again very quickly, is, please by all means join the lists that were put in the chat for the Complete Communities Coalition, the Seattle Comprehensive Plan website, so that you can be up to date on engagements that are out there, how to be involved, etc. And we want to thank you all so much for coming. We greatly appreciate you. It was a kind of rainy night, so you got to spend some time with us. And these recordings will be sent out and uploaded to our YouTube page in the next week. And so you can rewatch it and get information as well. So thank you all so much. We appreciate you. And I hope you all have a fabulous rest of your evening.
Yeah, thanks to B Seattle for hosting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Better, Kate.
It was great. Thank you.